Woke up in public by my personal experience 25 years ago. I remember the warm embrace of the international women's organizations. I felt I had support, that someone believed me, that someone listened to me. Did this organization demand any proof then? Did they question my version? Did they ask to conduct a comprehensive investigation before jumping to conclusions? No. How convenient it was at that time for these organizations to use my name, my fame, to invite me to their conferences that are in word of their own, to take a photo with the woman who became for them a symbol. And how ashamed, so ashamed I feel that I was nothing but an extra in their production. Why? Because today, in these conferences, they don't want to present the blood stains on the pants, the broken pelvises, the discredited bodies of my sisters, the bloodthirsty Hamas terrorists, even documenting their war crimes. And still, most of women organizations are silent. It took almost 2 months for the UN to publish this weekend, late at night, a weak condemnation. The horrific testimonies we have witnessed so far, and which we have been presented in this conference, should have awoken women organizations long ago, and get them to stand up with us in solidarity. But so far, this has not happened because of their cowardice, because of petty politics. In the place I grew up, there is an old saying, sheket u refesh. Silence is despicable. The women who were raped and murdered on October 7th will may be silent forever, but justice will be done. Truth shall prevail. We will never forget them. And we will make sure that the world will never forget them. We will be the voice that was taken away from them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lenore. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Ifat Biton. Is the president of Ahva Academic College and head of the Israeli Academic Colleges Board. She's a legal scholar and activist for equality.
Dear guests, I'm here today to speak on behalf of the silenced. Decades of researching and litigating for women in their most vulnerable positions have not prepared me for this current mission of giving voice to those who were silenced twice, not once. First on October 7th by Hamas, and second by the silence of the very UN organizations that were entrusted with the mandate of protecting them. Hamas terrorists committed countless violations of international humanitarian law against Israelis, attempting to demolish the Jewish people. They executed heinous war crimes and crimes against humanity. Their systemic and pre-organized use of sexual violence as a weapon of war was aimed to destroy our society through the bodies of women. The atrocious crimes perpetrated, filmed and distributed by Hamas terrorists, brutally assaulting and torturing women, girls, children, and men can no longer be denied. On the other hand, the sexual assaults committed by Hamas are significantly more prone to denial and concealment, mainly by silencing the victims, be it by the paralysis of trauma and stigma of survivors, by propaganda, or by murdering them. Practices of denying sexual crimes and not believing victims have long been condemned by feminists and human rights organizations. Feminist scholars worldwide criticize the ways in which liberal legal systems fail to provide women and girls with the protection they deserved, especially in cases of scarce direct evidence. These very practices are now held against our sisters. Not only they have suffered these atrocities, but they are also facing an outrageous demand to secure evidences from the battlefield. Already during the aftermath, and even though they are extremely low, I know first-handedly how overwhelming everything has been in the beginning, in the aftermath. I know because on October 7th, I have lost my beloved two brothers-in-law who were heroically fighting against the Hamas terrorists, trying to save innocent civilians terrorized in their own homes. I have been closely watching identification processes and the unprecedented number of dead women, hostages, and survivors. These were red flags that led me, together with other women specialists in Israel, to focus more on investigating the gender-based crimes that were eventually revealed. We were determined to fight for justice on their behalf. Their unimaginable pain and suffering are now presented by those who bear witness to the crime scenes, by the eyewitnesses that we've seen, and by the violated, murdered bodies. These evidence are incredible, and in the sense that they are indications, all carrying the profound legal implications that are needed and that will allow doing national and international justice with these victims. The extent to which sexual assaults and rapes were committed by Hamas is already gruesome, and much more remains to be revealed as the Israeli justice system is relentlessly investigating it. Your Excellencies, the world must unequivocally condemn these atrocities. Siding with our victims of these gender-based crimes would not position you a step beyond siding with basic norms of justice. If you tolerate this, if we tolerate this, we tolerate the demolition of the building blocks of humanity. If you tolerate this, then your daughters, your wives, and mothers will be next. As I conclude my remarks, allow me to introduce the last speaker, Mandana Dayani. Dayani is a human rights activist, entrepreneur, and attorney. She's the creator and co-founder of I Am a Voter. An immigrant from Iran, Dayani lives in Los Angeles. She credits her experience immigrating to the US as a religious refugee as one of her most formative inspirations.
The first time I had a gun pointed to my head, I was 4 years old. I was walking to the park with my mom in Tehran when the Islamic Republic's morality police pulled up alongside us. While their job was to monitor our hem lengths and our hair covering, their real job was abusing their power to deny women our rights and agency through deliberate acts of intimidation, dehumanization, and outright terror. I've never, ever forgotten the evil I saw in their eyes that morning. Even as a little girl, I knew a real-life monster when I saw one. Today, the Islamic Republic of Iran that forced me and my family out of our homeland remains as oppressive as ever. And it is the same regime that funds the terrorist group Hamas. On the morning of October 7th, Hamas brutalized, bound, burned, murdered, beheaded, and sexually assaulted young girls and women in Israel. They raped young girls at a music festival and threw their dead, naked bodies into piles on top of each other. They raped women and teenage girls with such force and mutilation that medical examiners found them with shattered pelvises and missing organs. They raped the dead bodies of women. They dragged women through the streets and paraded them as their conquests to cheering crowds. Rape was a premeditated, orchestrated, deliberate tactic of war. Monsters. As a feminist and activist, I have stood shoulder to shoulder with women my entire adult life. Women who look like me and women who don't. Together, we were the first to sign Me Too. We marched at the original women's marches. We advocated for the safe return of the girls kidnapped by Boko Haram. We joined the calls to end Asian hate and Islamophobia. We supported Black Lives Matter. We campaigned for LGBTQ rights. We spent months protesting for women life freedom. We flew to the US-Mexico border to demand the reunification of families. We fought to protect our democracy. But then, on October 7th, I suddenly found myself completely alone. The champions I had stood next to so many times through so many injustices just disappeared. I was heartbroken and abandoned. Peers, friends, universities, and fellow leaders who still remain silent, you have made the deliberate choice to look the other way. You saw the videos, you saw the photos, many recorded and live streamed by the terrorists themselves on our feeds. You know exactly what happened to these girls, and yet you turned away. You ignored our pleas to bring the hostages home. You didn't participate in our campaigns. You didn't hold signs. You didn't march. You didn't wear the t-shirts. You didn't sign the letters. When our women's mouths were bound and gagged, you chose not to be their voice. UN Women, it took you 50 days to condemn this gender-based violence and another 7 to utter a single word about the terrorists that perpetrated them. When we commit to speaking out for women and girls, that means all women and girls. When we said believe women, we meant all women. So if you ignore the very clear and obvious violation of just these innocent women and girls, or worse, when you twist propaganda to dare justify it, then you are politicizing their pain. You are denying their stories. You are stating that their rights are undeserving and that their suffering is unworthy of your protection, and you are complicit in emboldening their perpetrators who must be held to account. Showing moral leadership does not require you to just pick pick a team and ignore the brutal contours of the real world. Moral leadership does require you to see these women and all women. It is not your job to choose sides between them. It is your job to stand on their side. Now, the United Nations has a very long history of singling out the state of Israel. But I am not here to justify the need for a Jewish homeland or defend its right, our right, to exist. Because this, today, these brave people before you, this is about the women and the girls. And for their sake, it is time that the United Nations opens its eyes and does its job. It is time that my fellow leaders It is time that my fellow leaders, activists, and communities that have still remained silent open their hearts. You must not turn away from women who have been raped and massacred in the most horrific fashion simply because you dislike their government. Why is it that you cannot summon up your compassion for them? Why is it that you cannot find your voice to speak up for them? What is it about these women and girls that makes them so unworthy of your otherwise limitless capacity for outrage, solidarity, and justice? Once again, I'm afraid the reason is quite simple. Because they're Jews. If that is not the case, then now is the time to prove it. Join us. Speak up. Condemn the barbaric violence by Hamas against women and girls. I need you. We need you. These women and girls need you. As a child, standing outside the park, I remember looking straight into the evil eyes of those monsters. I was terrified. I knew those men would get away with anything they did that morning. I knew I had to remain silent. But I don't anymore. And neither do you. Please, please hold these monsters accountable. Denounce these war crimes, and always believe all women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandana Dayani, for these important words. It is indeed baffling to see the striking difference between the staunch advocacy of women's rights across the globe and how Israeli women are somehow left out of this same conversation. Some call it hypocrisy, and others highlight it with the viral hashtag now, #MeToo unless you're a Jew. Before we conclude the event, I would like to once again thank all the brave voices that you heard here today. And we would like to assure you that justice will be administered. I would like to bring to your attention, once again, if you haven't noticed, we will play it once again, the very powerful artwork displayed on the screens before you entered. We will show it again, reflecting how October 7th moments have been inscribed into the collective national trauma. And I would like to invite singer Montana Tucker to perform the national anthem with us. Montana? Oh, here. Hatikva.
Thank you. Color baleva pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulfat mizura kadima ayin letzion Sophia. Olo avda tikvatenu, atikva bat shnot apayim, livyotam hofshi beyatzenu eret Zion Verushalayim. Livyotam hofshi beyatzenu eret Zion Verushalayim. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our event. Thank you for being here today.